and oppose this move at the Supreme Court? Because you are a President's Counsel. You can do so. Are you going to take that stand, or are you going to go ahead with the campaign activities?
Our position is that we can't start campaign activities now. Nobody in their right mind will say that you can start campaign activities. You can't start campaign activities even by the middle of May. So then there cannot be a free and fair election. Democracy, if it is to function properly, election, if it is a proper election, there must be a free and fair election, and a campaign is at the heart of it. You can't have it. As to your question as to what we would do, we haven't still made a decision on that. But with the decision that the Election Commission made today, the proclamation that the President made on the 2nd of March dissolving Parliament has become ineffective and invalid, because that proclamation the President can make only under one strict condition, and that strict condition imposed by the Constitution is that within 3 months of that declaration, that proclamation, a new Parliament must convene. It is only under that condition he can make that proclamation, and if that cannot be met for whatever the reason, his proclamation becomes invalid.
But the Elections Commission, based on the constitutional provisions, can announce a date for election during this 3-month period.
The Election Commission functions under the Parliamentary Elections Act. The condition that I spoke about under Article 70 of the Constitution imposes that condition on the President. So I suppose the Election Commission perhaps took the view, I don't know, they perhaps took the view that they were acting under the Parliamentary Elections Act, and that has not given them any restrictions with regard to within what period the election can be postponed.
Thank you very much, Mr. M. A. Sumanthan, President's Counsel as well as former Member of Parliament. I now move my attention to President's Counsel, Mr. U.R. De Silva. Mr. De Silva, can you elaborate on how the Parliamentary Election Act works when it comes to campaigning? Now, how practically can this be implemented given the fact that we are facing a pandemic at present? Now, we know that a 45-day period has to be given to all political parties to engage in political activities. There is no strict rule per se. However, that has been the practice right throughout. Now, Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara, as well as Kandy are going to be under curfew up until the 27th of this month. Given that fact, do you think practically people would be able to engage in election campaigning as far as the Parliamentary Election Act is concerned?
Yeah, I think it is important to note that on what basis the Election Commission has decided on this date. So, as Mr. Sumanthan, President Counsel, quite correctly stated, he went on the basis of the Election Act. So the Election Commission was of the view that they have the power to announce the next date, because when they say that they are not in a position to go ahead with the elections, and it is their discussion that they can announce it at any stage. Not that they have to do it on the day that they have gazetted. They have to do it within that period, within a certain period, and they have the option to do so. Today they have done it. So why they have decided to go to 20th of June? They want to give sufficient time for them to arrange the elections as well as the candidates to get ready for the election. So they have had discussions. I saw the TV that they had discussions with various authorities regarding this issue, and thereafter finally they have decided on this date. So this date is going beyond 2nd of June. So that means what? The Election Commissioner or the President, Chairman, has decided in consultation with the election, the other members, that they are in a position to have these elections on the 20th of June. So now we have to think positively and see whether the candidates have time. So now we can get experience when we go to 1989 election. So that during that time, what is the position of the country? So the JVP problems were there. So though there were problems, 1989 election was held. So how they campaign it? So now we have to decide whether we are going to have mass rallies going out and do that, or we have to think some other mechanism. So now electronic media is there, Facebook is there, and then the papers are there. So all these things are there, and they have to. I saw that they are discussing with the postal department also. If they are working, they can send various documents to the people, and on that basis, we have to adjust our campaign in such a way that the people will, the message will go to people.
Now you speak about, Mr. De Silva, you speak about the 1989 election, which was held under dire circumstances as well, when the JP insurrection was taking place. But we're talking now about a global pandemic, and we're experiencing such a pandemic since 1918 in the world. So people cannot go to polling booths or have to maintain that distance. Political party representatives like Mr. Sumandaran will not be able to hold election rallies because of the social distancing norm that would come into play. But you say that there could be a different wave of election campaigning that may take place during this period.
We have to think over.
But is that democracy?
Yeah. That is democracy, because we are allowing the people to come and listen to us or observe us, and then normal rallies also same thing. So we are going there, and there we are making a lot of speeches, and people hear that, and thereafter they decide. So likewise, the electronic media is there. So it is very, I think, appropriate in this particular condition. There are a lot of ways in this country.
But not everyone can spend money, Mr. De Silva, on electronic media.
Money. No, now, as far as the television is concerned, so they can watch the television. Now, in this country, if you say that most of the people, they don't have it, I don't agree with. A lot of channels are there.
No, but most of the media channels in Sri Lanka, apart from a few, are very biased towards political parties.
That's a different act.
So how can you practice democracy in a situation of that sort?
I am not in agreement with that, because the election commissioner has to give some guidelines. So he has to stick to very strict, stringent rules. Otherwise, you can't control it. We have to have that. Now, as Mr. Sumandaran, President Council stated, they also of the view that election should be held.
Yeah.
Now, at this stage or in some other date, we are going to do it. On what basis we are going to do it? I think we have decided on this date. We will be positive, and we will wait and see whether the country is progressing. And at the moment, I don't agree that the whole country is in this situation, because now we are stick to very particular areas, actually 4 areas, so that we have to concentrate on that. And the medical authorities have given guidelines. So government has to adhere to those things and show to the election commissioner. Then now, the 20th of June, we can have that election.
Thank you very much, Mr. U.R. De Silva. We, of course, as the show progresses, we have Charlotte Benedict and Farah Shaukat Ali who would drill you as the show progresses on the need for election at this juncture, at this hour. We now move our attention to President's Counsel, Mr. Raziq Zarruq. A very good evening, Mr. Zarruq, and nice to have you on the show for the first time. Now, with the Parliament dissolved, this effectively means that there is no legislation to pass laws. And let's say someone really wants to go and file a fundamental rights petition against the decision taken by the Elections Commission, the Supreme Court is not sitting. So in a situation of this sort, what can an individual really do? These are exceptional circumstances which need an exceptional answer, Mrs. Zarruq.
Exceptional circumstances that need an exceptional answer. I think the Supreme Court has to sit as soon as possible. I don't know. The whole problem is the Supreme Court has scheduled to sit on a particular date, but because of the COVID-19 crisis, they were unable to sit, and they have not yet rather decided upon a date. I believe yet, unfortunately, the whole place is closed up, Halstoff, because it comes under the Keselwatta police area. But If, for example, if someone wants to file a fundamental rights application in the Supreme Court, there's nothing to prevent it, provided the registry is working to file that application. And subsequently, of course, then thereafter the registrar, in discussion with perhaps the Chief Justice and the other judges, might decide on a date depending on the urgency of the situation that they should sit. So that exceptional circumstances might sometimes bring in exceptional remedies. So that factor is there. So I don't think you can shut it out completely. If they are needed, they might give. Now, for example, they have decided on 2 particular dates for bail applications to be considered. And they think that they went on to the extent of saying, well, you don't have to come here and file it. You could do it electronically. And they were even thinking in terms of making submissions electronically. So this might lead to a lot of innovation. I mean, we can't have a situation where the system of justice shuts down in the country as much as everything else shuts down. So there has to be some innovative methods.
It has happened.
It has happened. Unfortunately, it has happened, and even the scheduled dates on which the courts were to sit, we couldn't sit. So
now, Ms. Zaruk, you have Mr. M.S. Sumanthiran, who was an opposition parliamentarian. You have Mr. U.R. De Silva, who was the former president of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. In your humble opinion, do you think that the need of the hour is an election in Sri Lanka?
Well, you will have to have an election, as Mr. Sumanthiran himself said.
Absolutely.
The democratic process has to go on.
Agreed,
As to when, it's a matter of timing. When? It's a matter of timing. At the moment, everyone is focused not on elections. Nobody is focused on elections, but everybody is focused on controlling the spread of the virus and bringing normalcy to the country. That's the first priority. But the election looms. We need a parliament. The country has to go on. The government has to go on. We need a government. We need the opportunity given for people to exercise their franchise. Franchise is inalienable and it has to be exercised. So what is the best time? So that is why, for some reason, perhaps after discussing with the task force and the other stakeholders who are involved in it, that the Elections Commissioner decided, or rather the Commission decided, that 20th June should be the ideal date. So let's hope so. By 20th June, we will have the elections, or at the same time, in the meantime, things will get normal. So we are very optimistic, hopefully. That's all we could do at the moment.
Thank you very much, President's Counsel Raziq Zaruk. At a time that health and the economy should be the top agenda of anyone in Sri Lanka, it's quite sad to say that holding of election has reigned supreme in place of all this. So I open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my immediate left is Charlotte Bennett, who is also a law student, and on to my far left is Farah Shaukat. Let's start off tonight's show with Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Shamir. My first question goes out to President's Counsel M.A. Sumanthiran. Sir, when you gave your opening address, you said that since the Elections Commission scheduled the election on the 20th of June, that invariably means that the proclamation made by the President on the 2nd of March now becomes invalid. Does this mean that the previous Parliament that the President dissolved is once again alive and well right now?
Yes, the previous Parliament's life went on till 1st of September. Ordinarily, it could have been 1st of September. But President is given the right to dissolve it 6 months earlier. And he did that at the very first opportunity. 6 months earlier was 1st of March, and 2nd of March he dissolved it. My contention is that by the 1st of March, he knew very well that no election could be held in the next 2 months. Knowing that, he dissolved Parliament. He shouldn't have done that. He even postponed his trip to China in February. And 2nd of March, he dissolved the Parliament because when he dissolves Parliament under Section 70, it's only under a very strict condition that within 3 months, new Parliament must sit. So the constitution is very, very specific that the country cannot be without a parliament for longer than 3 months. That's a principle that is set in stone in the constitution. So for whatever reason, if that is breached, then his declaration, his proclamation dissolving parliament becomes invalid. The parliament that is dissolved will come in, spring back to life. And that is also important while we are confronted with COVID-19, that we have a parliament. I mean, we are a democracy. A democracy has like a three-legged stool. You have the judiciary, as Mr. Zaruk said, somehow, whatever the court must sit. Nobody is saying because of the court don't sit, no. Similarly, parliament is equally important. You can't run the country only on executive. See, the lawmaking powers are given to parliament and parliament alone. And confronted with a novel issue like this, it is a parliament that must pass new laws. Countries world over, parliaments world over have passed new laws, calling them Coronavirus Act, COVID-19 Special Act, and so on. That is important. All our health acts are, one is more than 150 years old.
The Quarantine Act.
Contagious Diseases Act, under which the health minister is now making regulations, over 150 years old. Quarantine Act is over 100 years old. Right? This is a new phenomenon. You need new laws. Parliament also can sit in different ways. We don't all have to 225 get into one chamber. No. If Maldives Parliament can sit online, surely we can do better than that. So, he should not have dissolved Parliament, but even if when he did, within 10 days, WHO declared it a pandemic. He should have revoked it immediately because he knew very well that no election could be held before in May for Parliament to sit in June. But now that the Election Commission, under powers vested in them, have gone and set a date beyond 2nd of June, I say the proclamation made by the President on the 2nd of March has become invalid and of no force or avail in law, and the new Parliament, after the Gazette comes out tonight, the new Parliament springs back to life.
So, Mr. Mandran, are you...
Not the new Parliament, I'm sorry.
The old.
The old Parliament springs back to life.
Right. So, do you mean to say that the old Parliament has to now reconvene?
It's not a question of reconvening. The Gazette becomes invalid. 2nd of March, Gazette becomes invalid. So the Parliament is back in
full force.
Full force. Yeah.
So isn't it important now, at a time the Parliament is dissolved, to pass laws on expenditure, make sure that the expenditure comes into play? Because let's talk a little bit about Canada. Canada has been able to deposit money on ordinary citizens' bank accounts through parliamentary legislation because the Parliament has been in force. And in a situation like in Sri Lanka, unfortunately, because there is no parliamentary procedure and there is political tug of war between the opposition as well as the government, the Parliament, we are in disarray because one party is saying it's important to hold an election, the other party is saying that there is no need to have an election, and who's at the end of the day facing the brunt
That's right.
of it?
This is a very important issue about public finance. Parliament is in total control of public finance. The Constitution says so in so many words. Right? So you need the sanction of Parliament to draw from the Consolidated Act. Now the Executive is violating it. And they are drawing from the Consolidated Act without the sanction of Parliament. And that's a very dangerous situation. Beyond 30th April, they cannot even do that. The Parliament, all the opposition members are saying, we will come and sanction it. We are faced with this new problem. Nobody is going to block this. We'll come and sanction it. Government is talking of a time when the one small section of the opposition raised a question in Parliament and the government withdrew the bill that they brought, the finance bill that they brought in February. Now, we, the TNA, did not oppose it. We didn't oppose it. It could have easily been passed, but the government withdrew it and are putting the blame on one small section of the opposition. So, but now, today, not one single member of the opposition will oppose sanctioning public expenditure on account of fighting COVID-19.
Ms. Zaruk, now, Mr. Sumandaran is making sense here. He's saying that the opposition parties will unite for a common cause and hence convene the old Parliament. We saw a similar situation, not a similar situation, but in 1981, when the then President went for a referendum whether or not to hold an election. I don't want to discuss about the premise in which he came to that decision. However, do we really need a parliamentary election now? Because you can convene the old parliament and you can go ahead, and the opposition parties will support the government's cause to make sure that we all get out of this pandemic and come on top as far as Sri Lanka is concerned.
Well, you're discussing a possibility, but just to say something about what Mr. Swandiran just mentioned, I would beg to disagree and differ. I don't think the mere fact that the election commissioner declared a new date invalidates the dissolution of parliament by the president. I don't agree on that. Maybe we are at two different levels, because the election commissioner has a specific purpose, and that is to hold elections free and fair in the country. And the mere fact that he determines that the election should be held on the 20th of June doesn't in any way derogate the powers of the president, who have already...
Mr. Zaruk, does the fact that
Who have already dissolved,
cannot
dissolve parliament, and that will not be overriding. Sorry, go ahead.
Does the fact that parliament cannot convene within 3 months of it being dissolved, namely on the 2nd of June, the fact that parliament cannot convene on the 2nd of June invariably invalidate the proclamation by the president?
No, it doesn't. But the circumstances as such, this is totally something, it doesn't invalidate. The fact is that you can't convene parliament because of certain intervening circumstances.
So under the current situation, President's Counsel Zaruk, how does the president spend money? Because as President's Counsel M.A. Sumandiran pointed out, the parliament is the sanctioning body for public finances. How does the president spend money after the 30th of April?
He could go on till 3 months, isn't it?
Yes.
He could go on till June, isn't it?
2nd of June.
30th of April.
30th of April, yes. So how does he spend after that?
Don't ask me the question. I believe he will have to devise some method, or he will have to come in, or then subsequently even at least claims come to parliament and seek approval.
President's Counsel, UR De Silva, there was this opinion, there was an exchange of letters between a member of the Elections Commission, Professor Ratanajivan Hool. The Elections Commission as a whole wrote this letter to the President, to which the Presidential Secretary P.B. Jayasundar responded. Now, in this letter, the request was that the President uses his powers to get an opinion from the Supreme Court regarding how we should face this situation. What is the viability of this option in the current situation?
He can write a letter like that because he has the duty to inform the society what is the next date. That is, when he says that he is not in a position to have the elections, then next step would be, it's not the fact that he should do it immediately. Within some period, he has to announce the next date. So till such time, President has to wait and see what is the next date. So if he says 20th of June, then there is no necessity for the president to go and ask anything from the Supreme Court. What is the opinion he is going to ask? Then with regard to the things that he is doing at the moment, so he has a discussion. So if he is of the view that I am in a position to do this and then try to solve this problem, if he has the resources, if he thinks so, then he has the power to do so at this stage. And if he is of the view that I am not in a position to do so, then he can summon the parliament. That's a different matter. That is up to him to decide. There is no mandatory requirement. There is no mandatory section here to state that immediately, once the election commissioner says no, you have to go to the Supreme Court or you have to summon the parliament. All these things are via experience, new things. So that is, and the important factor would be, it is categorical stated that some unforeseen reason. So that is the very reason I think that the Election Commission has decided to postpone it. Now, after considering it, they have every opportunity to have it before 2nd of June. They went beyond that. What it means that they think that within that period we are in a position to solve, to some extent we can solve this problem, and then we are happy with the authorities' decisions, and they are predicting. He has the authority, and discussion will be taken by him, not by us. So we can't say anything. And I don't agree with Mr. Sumantran, President Council, with regard to call in the parliament and get the approval, because the way that the people, not the President Council, Sumantran's party, the other people, other opposition people, what they express their views, we can't see they are in agreement with the way that the government is solving the problem. So are we having any problem? Now you can see that the President and the Prime Minister, they call leaders of the various parties to come to a certain place, and then they decided what to do. They ask their opinion. So likewise they can do so if the President wants it. Otherwise the President has the power at this stage to proceed with, and even after 30th also we want to see whether is there any problem or any prohibition for him to say no. So that's up to the President to decide.
Mr. Sumantran, what about the doctrine of necessity then, where the President and other state actors can take even extra legal action to restore order? And we've seen that soon after the tsunami, in the issuance of death certificates.
That's right.
What about that?
You see, doctrine of necessity necessarily involves a situation where there is no other way. There is absolutely no other way. If there was no other way, then you can have resort to doctrine of necessity. But here, there are plenty of other ways available. As I said, revoking the proclamation dissolving Parliament is one. But there is another one, Article 70, in which this strict condition of 3 months is imposed. It's said twice in Article 70. One in Article 73 and again in Article 75. But Article 77 says, if at any time after the dissolution of Parliament the President is satisfied that an emergency has arisen of such a nature that an earlier meeting of Parliament is necessary, he may by proclamation summon the Parliament which has been dissolved. So that's another way. If he had done that, at least that, without even revoking, then Parliament could have made laws to meet with the situation, Parliament could have sanctioned public finances, and third, this legal deadlock that has arisen now, Parliament could have resolved it. You see, court can't resolve it. Courts have consistently, Mr. Zaruk will agree with me, have consistently held, whenever there is a legislative deadlock, courts have always said, we are giving it must, Parliament must resolve it. Right? They have sometimes advised Parliament, you take steps to resolve it. That's a consistent position. So this legislative deadlock, Parliament could have resolved it.
Is it?
So when we have so many options available, doctrine of necessity can never be resorted to.
Speaking candidly, do you think that they don't want to reconvene Parliament?
So that's very clear.
Because they don't enjoy a majority.
Yeah, that's probably true. But you see, when the opposition parties are giving the country a guarantee at the cusp of an election, surely they are not going to violate that.
Have you all had discussions with with Prime Minister?
We had.
Rajapaksa?
There are two occasions in which he convened a party leaders meeting. I attended both of those. And in both of those, I myself spoke about this. Convened Parliament under 70.
What about the United National Party and the SJB?
United National Party, Mr. Vikramasinghe also said, yes, that option must be explored. That is a good one. SJB said we will sanction anything that you bring. We will sanction. Mr. Sajid Premadasa gave that assurance. So all of us expressed our view that Parliament must convene.
And why do you think? Candidly, why?
Candidly speaking, I think the executive thinks that this is a convenient way of running the country without the cumbersome feature of a parliament and other aspects of democracy.
But they're having elections.
Well, elections, it is a politically convenient time, they think, to have elections to obtain a majority.
that they may get or they may not get. But that's their political calculation.
Some people have pointed out to the holding of elections rather successfully in South Korea.
Yes, I was just looking at what South Korea does. You see, 26.7% of the voters in South Korea voted electronically. And some 100,000 odd COVID-19 patients voted in special booths. And every other voter was given personal protective equipment to get into the polling booths and vote. 66% overall voted. To conduct an election of that nature in Sri Lanka, we will spend 100 times more than we spend at our normal elections.
And is there a danger of computer Jilmart showing its face?
Yeah, we don't have the necessary programming to have electronic voting. We can't test it at a parliamentary general election like that now. That should have been, the test should have been run much earlier. So it's not at all possible. I mean, South Korea and Sri Lanka cannot be compared at all.
Also, President's Counsel M.A. Sumanthiran, now you said that the executive finds it convenient to run the country without, the whole cumbersome nature of putting regulations through Parliament and all that. But it's not only the executive that thinks this. The general public speaking, especially on social media, what we can see is people coming and saying, we don't need a parliament. I mean, what's the use of a parliament? They've shared footage of how people in parliament threw water at each other, fought in parliament for over 3 days, and saying, is this the thing that we need right now amid all of this crisis? Why don't we allow the president, the executive, to run a free hand?
Yeah. Ironically, those who misbehaved in parliament are actually in the government benches now, right? But that's ironic. Nevertheless, I know the sentiment of the general public, but that doesn't mean that we can be rid of parliament. The only feature of a democracy is that you have a parliament. If there is no parliament in the country, this country is not a democracy. If people are willing to say we don't want democracy, let's have a dictatorial rule, then that's another matter. But I don't think our people will come to that point ever. Right? You cannot call a country a democracy without a parliament. Every democracy has a parliament. However badly behaved that parliament is, and world over all parliaments behave like that. That's a bad thing. But you need a parliament.
Now, Mr. De Silva, initially when Mr. Sumanthiran made his opening remarks, he said that he's very sure that the election will not be held on the 20th of June. He was quite positive about it. So what happens then? Let's say this 45-day period for campaigning is not, we are not able to see it because of the curfew that would be imposed. Because we know right now, the Government Medical Officers Association as well as Community Physicians of Sri Lanka have articulated that an election is not the need of the hour at present. So let's say this 45 days of election campaigning is not held come the 15th of May 2020. So then what happens? Will the election be postponed again?
Yes, that is why I want to say that now they have given a time period. And as you said, what they meant was that they are allowing the candidates to do some campaigning. So as you said, 45 days, if the election commission is of the view that the country is going in the wrong footing and then they can't have the elections in a proper way, they can postpone it again. So that is not a bar to postpone it. Then the president has the power to decide and go forward because it is stated that unforeseen reasons they can do so. So that power is there with the election commission. So we are positive. What I say is, at this stage, we have to summon the parliament. That is, now, at one point of time, we say we don't want election. So without election, how can we summon the parliament? I am totally against the summoning of the earlier parliament because we know very well that the people have decided that we don't want earlier parliament. Because of that only the president has came to power. So on that basis...
No, that is a wrong assumption to come to Mr. De Silva, because you cannot draw a parallel between a presidential election and a parliamentary election.
What I'm saying is,
right.
now the ruling government was there.
That could be your opinion.
No, that's what I am. My opinion is that I said I am not in agreement to call the parliament again because there is no necessity, as Mr. Sumantran quite correctly said, that he can have the discussion. And he had gone through this particular section. It says President has the power. If he thinks so, then only he can.
I have not done law, but I think Shalan here would learn in his primary law lesson that there are three arms of government. One is the executive, one is the legislature, and then comes the judiciary. In all these three elements, only one element is now in function, and that is the executive. And this is a very dangerous affair.
Of course, that is why.
And that is why it is important to convene the current parliament.
No, that is why I say the election commission has decided to have election. Now, in what part of time you say that we don't need election because in this particular situation we don't want to have an election? Okay, perfectly right. And then what next? That the solution is calling the old parliament? No. The election commission has the power and he will decide whether to proceed with. Now, he has the power, whether he is going to have the power, and then he has decided that 20th June I can have this election. So if he is not satisfied the condition at that moment, beforehand he can decide, and then he can say I am postponing it. So there is no bar for that. Then I say that it is the president that decides whether to call the parliament again or not. So Mr. Sumantran says that automatically the proclamation will come to that situation. It is not correct because there is no such provision here. We assume that it comes to that position. But what I say is, at the moment, the country is going in that way. The election commission has decided to have this 20th of June. Whether Mr. Sumantran, President Council, says whether it can be held or not, it is up to the commission to decide. So if the commission is of the view, and mind you, that if the commission is of the view that we can have separate election in separate district, forgetting Colombo, they can have the election separate.
No, but that was what we experienced during the Mahinda Rajapaksa era.
What I'm
and
saying
most of the people were against that move
I am not
to have
saying
staggered elections.
I quite appreciate your view. Now, if the position is that election commission has the power, it is being given by the constitution and the election laws also, he has the power to have the elections like that way.
Right. Mr. Zaruk, now, I remember as a kid, my parents saying that President J.R. Jayawardena, when introducing the executive presidential constitution in Sri Lanka, had said, I can do anything except make a man a woman or a woman a man. It seems his task is now very difficult, given the current conditions, isn't it?
No, that is, of course, he was expressing the powers now that he could do, what Parliament could do. Perhaps.
No, but it seems that he's really taking advantage of this clause and this constitution that has been empowered on him as an executive president.
He brought in this hybrid constitution in 77, where he, of course, at that time, he also brought in a concept where he didn't recognize minority parties. The cutoff point was 12.5%. That was brought down to 5%. Otherwise, there would have been mayhem in this country if the minority parties were not represented in parliament. So in 89, that was 88 rather, it was corrected. But just to coming back onto what the earlier discussion, this as regards finances and the rest of it, well, we are in a situation where we have to spend for the country. The public servants have to be paid, the health system has to function, economic activity has to take place. So my concept is true. Even if Parliament has not approved it, the President should exercise his powers and keep the country going. He'll have to. Besides, I would also like to draw particularly the attention of Mr. Sumantran, the Article 150, subsection 3 of the Constitution, where it says where the President dissolves Parliament before the appropriation bill, for the financial year has passed into law, he may, unless Parliament shall have already made provisions, authorize the issue from the consolidated fund and the expenditure of such sums as he may consider necessary for the public services until the expiry of a period of 3 months from the date on which the new Parliament is summoned to meet. So there has to be another date for a new Parliament to be summoned. And from that point onwards, for a further 3 months, he could go on.
So therefore, you need to have elections.
Therefore, the elections are being held on the 20th of June. Let's hope everything is tickety-boo and we are holding the elections on the 20th of June.
No, that's very hypothetical.
No, not hypothetical. It's not hypothetical that it will be postponed. The elections will be held as it is. It's not hypothetical that it is not going to be held.
That's the announcement of the Elections Commission.
That is the announcement of the Elections Commission. That's not hypothetical. But if that is so, 150, and if he is bound to nominate the date for summoning the next Parliament.
The President.
The new Parliament. The word is new. Very important to note, the word is new Parliament. So in which case, 153 might apply. I would like to know Mrs. Vandran's views on that. 153 might apply.
Yeah.
So that is that's the provision in which he could do that. Apart from the fact that the concept of doctrine of necessity, even if the law doesn't permit and all that, he'll have to spend all this and then come before Parliament and seek approval.
Let's give an opportunity to Mr. Mandran to respond to that.
Yeah.
You can rebut that point if you
yes, so
wish.
153, we have looked at. 153 says, unless Parliament shall have already made provision. Right? So that is the controlling phrase. If Parliament had not made provision, then authorize issue from the consolidated fund for a period of 3 months. Now, Parliament has made provision.
Have they?
Yes, up until the 30th of April, Parliament has made provision.
Only till 30th of April?
That's right.
Not thereafter?
No, that is true. But this contemplates a situation where budget has not, the appropriation bill has not been passed and Parliament has not made provision. Yeah, Parliament has made provision.
My
interpretation
would be that Parliament have made provisions only till 30th.
That is one. That's one. Parliament has made provision.
Because no appropriation.
But only until 30th of April, that is true, right? But this applies only if Parliament has not made provision for that year. That is one point. The other is that on a date, 3 months from the date on which new Parliament is summoned to meet. Now, President summoned new Parliament to meet on the 14th of May. That is why I kept saying right from the word go, that has become impossible to perform. That can never be a date on which the new Parliament is summoned to meet. Election is not going to be held before the 14th of May.
But what about, you address this doctrine of necessity, but what about this constitutional exceptionalism which allows the President to do just about anything under Article 33(2), I think it is. This empowers the President to do all such acts and things not inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution or written law, as by international law, custom or usage, the President is authorized or required to do. What about that then?
See, that is a general provision that is given because we are under a system of executive presidency. Right? But where you start in a chapter which says 148, that says Parliament shall have full control over public finance, full stop. Right? Where public finance is concerned, President doesn't have powers. Full control. It's not even shared with the presidency.
Yeah, that's correct.
So far as public...
The 150 is an exception to that.
Yeah, 150 is an exception to that. That's correct. I agree with Mrs. Zaru. 150 is an exception to that for the limited period. But I say that's controlling words are if Parliament has not made provision. Secondly, the point that I made right from the word go is that it is not possible for Parliament, new Parliament to meet. You know, it has to be read with 70. That's why I keep saying Article 70 imposes a heavy condition on the President if he is to exercise that power to dissolve Parliament earlier than its due term. It appears twice. It says he must, in the proclamation dissolving Parliament, he must announce the date of the election and a date for the new parliament to sit,
No, no,
which can never
the president need not announce the date.
No, no, he
it's
has
the
to-
elections commission that needs to announce the date.
No.
time.
If it is an early dissolution, it is the president who has to announce a date of the election and a date on which the new parliament meets.
How sure are you on that?
Well, I'll read it to you if you're not sure about that.
I'll give you a few minutes.
No, I'll just read it to you. A proclamation proroguing, 71, provided that the president shall not dissolve parliament until the expiration of a period of not less than 4 years and 6 months. And then a proclamation dissolving parliament shall fix a date or dates for the election of members of parliament.
But not the president there.
President.
Yes, President.
President only can make this proclamation, nobody else.
President's Council M.A. Sumanthiran, the first proclamation, the president must issue a date for the
2
election.
dates. Even, no, the point. I'm coming to the main point. Not a dispute on who is to. It is the president. We know it's a president who has to do that.
Yes.
That's not the point I'm making. The point that I'm making is when he makes a proclamation, there are 2 dates that he shall mention. If he doesn't mention those dates, that proclamation is invalid. If he doesn't give a date for the new parliament to meet, it is invalid because it's repeated.
So now a date was fixed by
It was
the
fixed.
president.
It is repeated saying he can change the date of the new parliament meeting. Nevertheless, even that new date must be within 3 months of the dissolution of parliament. That's why I said twice it says that. So it's under a heavy condition. It's a conditional power given to the president. Now, Mr. U.R. De Silva, President's Council, was saying it's a power given to the president. On a number of occasions, he said it's a power given to the president, even to consult the Supreme Court, to revoke the proclamation, all of that. Yes, it is a power given to the president, but in our law, there is no power that is exercised arbitrarily or as he wishes. All power has to be utilized for the public benefit. There is nothing called absolute discretion. Everybody is given power to hold in trust for the people. So, in a situation like this, President can be compelled. Now, fortunately, we have the 19th
that's
Amendment.
a good point.
President can be compelled to revoke his gazette.
Yes, now that's a good point, Mr. De Silva.
Or to even summon Parliament under 77.
So what do you have to say about
No,
that?
that is why I say that President has the power, and as he quite correctly pointed out, benefit of the people should be the main concern. He can't arbitrarily take decisions. At this stage, what is the benefit? As you said, we don't want election. At the moment, we are concerned about the health condition and the running of the country and the economic situation.
And hence reconvene Parliament.
And reconvening Parliament is a discussion.
Yeah.
So whether he thinks that it is an essential thing, it is helpful to the people, he can do so.
Now, on these conditions, Mr. De Silva, sorry for my ignorance on this constitutional law. That is why we have 3 learned President's Council debating this topic today. Why can't the President, if there is an issue with all this, which is of contention, seek the opinion of the Supreme Court on this matter? Why is he silent? And you have the President's Secretary issuing a strongly worded document to the Elections Commissioner articulating that the President does not have to do it. But the President could get the opinion from the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka on this.
So there is no necessity. That is why I say the Secretary has sent a letter to state that you can't dictate to the President to go to the Supreme Court at us. If they want, they can go to Supreme Court. Any other, as Mr. Saruk says, President Council, that any other person individually go to Supreme Court.
But there has been many instances in which former presidents have gone and sought the opinion of the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka.
Perfectly right. Perfectly. At this stage, is it necessary? That is what we have to concern. Because now, when opposition party can say, various people can say, it is the needy hour. But the President is of the view. That is not the arbitrary thing.
On the same fact that Mr. Sumanthiran brought on with regard to trust, and that is placed by the public on that particular position, he could do so.
You are in a correct path, because that is the trust. He was given the trust to run the country, and then he is doing a service. At this
So
stage,
when there is a contention on a matter like this,
so he is not concerned about the election. That is why you will say, no, he
is concerned about the election,
So,
isn't it?
How can you say that? Because he is at the moment doing the benefit of the people to eradicate this particular issue. So then the economy.
So are you trying to say that the president is apolitical, Mr. De Silva?
No, we can't say like that,
Yeah.
because the problem is political is a different thing, and then giving the services to the people is different.
But
So
given the fact that we know who the president is, he was the former president's brother. We know how this president came into being. Now, I'm trying to put in words into your mouth, unfortunately, but I have to do so. We know the background of this. I think the general public are not fools. They know who the face of the last presidential election was as well. So given that fact, you should, isn't it?
No,
Is it prudent
that is
for the...
your view. Of
Yeah.
course, you have the opportunity to have that.
Yeah.
That's a different matter. But the people have decided other way. That is why, knowing very well, as you say, that he is not a person like that, the way that you have brought in.
Yeah.
And then if he is of that caliber, then people won't vote for him. Now they have decided this is the person we want. That's a different matter. So whether politically he is doing wrong thing, then we can criticize that. That's a open thing. But at the moment, the main point would be we are concentrating on this particular issue, that is COVID-19. So whether we are doing, the president is doing such a service to the country, and he is doing a lot of service. I can see that, because the intelligence
That is subjective.
what I say is intelligence service. We have to admit that fact. What they do, they have gone to hold the country and do some great
But
service.
technically, Ms. De Silva, now, today I heard Mr. Sumandaran saying, right after getting the bail application approved for Mr. Ranjan Ramanayaka, former member of parliament, that it is even
right.
illegal.
That is how we have to go to the
He
court.
also qualified by saying that I'm not saying not to.
Not to do so, but
Yeah, but you see, the point is,
Yeah.
why is the president doing that when there is enough provisions in the law to legally impose curfew? Why is he not doing it? It's a very, very dangerous thing, because the very, very definition of law is that it must be definite. People must be able to know what is permitted, what is prohibited.
And I think probably that is one of the reasons that Mr. Sumandaran was able to secure bail for
that's right.
Mr. Ranjan Ramanayaka as well.
Because it started from an illegality. Police
I
asked
am in
guys,
agreement with him.
Mr. U.R. De Silva,
Yeah.
well versed in
That's
criminal
right,
law
yeah.
more than, Mr. Zaruk also.
he's quite
Both
correct
of them
with
are
that.
well versed in
That's
criminal
right,
law.
yeah.
They will definitely agree with me.
That's correct,
Right?
yes.
They'll agree with me.
Perhaps there can only be a mitigatory factor, I must tell you that. The reason is, well, if you are going to bring in part 2 of the Public Security Act, then you will have to declare an emergency.
No, but without declaring emergency,
then
under section 16.
Part 3 can come in without declaring an emergency.
Yeah, he could have
in
done
which
that.
case, gazettes are the bigger. But of course, then it becomes very rigid.
But then
So I have only thing I could only say in mitigation of the whole thing is that it may be to give more flexibility
that's right.
to the people to adjust the time.
Not the people,
and
for the president
for
to
the
keep everything
give more
within his own
flexibility.
hands.
So that
Right?
more
that's a
flexibility.
subjective statement.
Well, otherwise, why?
Mr. Sumandaran.
No, there are other laws also. You see, contagious disease ordinance also has provision.
Yeah.
Quarantine, no. The Minister of Health can impose this.
So I have a question for the three of you. So you all are of the opinion that we could impose a state of emergency.
No, not necessary.
No, not necessarily.
Not
You can enforce curfew legally without
Part
declaring
3.
emergency.
Part 3 can be
Part
invoked
3
without
can be
emergency.
without a declaration of emergency. That's the point I was making.
So
Even
why is
without,
the president doing that?
Well,
That's my question.
For the reasons best known, perhaps he would like to have more flexibility.
Flexibility, yes.
Otherwise, every
in
time
his
you have to
hands.
go for a gazette, even if you change the time today and tomorrow. You can't do this so frequently.
Flexibility. You mean
You can't change the
many
time
can
so
act
frequently.
dictatorially?
Now, today you impose a curfew at 5 o'clock, you put a gazette, then tomorrow morning you have to change it to some other time, another gazette.
Correct.
Right.
So it's a question of then keep filing gazettes. The question of flexibility.
I have
So you can ask the police to impose the curfew.
I have a question from a viewer of Newsline, which is another program that runs on News1st on Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 8 p.m. Now, this is what they're saying. They say here, the COVID confirmed figures are going up, consistently going up. The number of deaths are still happening. And amidst all this, the government wants to have elections. It says here that a fundamental human right is the right to life. And instead of them concentrating on that, sustaining life, they are actually gambling with all this and putting the people at risk. They are risking the fundamental right to life. And that too is a human right. To any of you.
That's not correct, Faraz. That's not correct at all.
Well, which one is wrong?
That's
which
too
one
dramatic.
Is wrong?
That question, everything. Too
No,
dramatic.
I'm sorry. I've been keeping I've been keeping notes here since the 26th of March till today. 202 deaths, new deaths. It was 102 on the 26th of March.
Deaths?
Confirmed cases. 202 new ones at an average of just over 8 per day. Doesn't that matter to you?
No, it does come. Let's look at this. I think within the limited resources and within whatever we have done a marvelous job when compared to the other countries.
Let's gamble with the people's lives.
No, it's not a question of gambling. We have controlled the number of deaths to 7. If you look into the selfless service the medical personnel and the others are doing, you must say that, I don't know whether I should say this, we are controlling and we are managing them well, so much so that 2 days or 3 days ago, there was not a single patient, even any ventilator.
27 people,
no,
27 people today, new cases.
No, let me come to that. I'm coming to that.
34
in all
34.
These cases are all known. Those areas were known. They were all quarantined.
So they were known. They didn't say that.
No,
because they hid the figures.
No. They found it, but it's within. It's manageable. It's manageable. They are managing it, and I don't think that statement is completely
when we
wrong.
reach 400 confirmed cases, and if we take China's experience of 5% of confirmed cases needing ICU treatment in an infectious diseases environment, we will run out of ICU beds. Right now, the IDH has only got approximately 12, and between the 3 hospitals, they've got less than 20.
No, I think the number of beds have now been increased to some 500 to 600, I believe.
No. Sri Lanka has only got 580 before this nonsense started.
That's correct.
They made orders. They won't supply us because there are countries that need more, so they are rationalizing it.
At the moment, I believe, at the moment we are managing. You're thinking of a possibility.
It's 200.
No, you're thinking of
304.
Faraz, you're thinking of a possibility.
No, but
it's a constant.
Of a worst case, no, you're thinking of a worst case scenario.
No,
And if you're prudent, you need to.
No, let's go.
Ms. Daruk, with respect to Faraz, this is not a claim that he's making. This is a claim made by the Government Medical Officers Association of Sri Lanka. This is a claim made by the Community Physicians of Sri Lanka. We are not doctors.
I know.
We have to follow the
But at the moment, that situation has not come up.
Yeah, but
you are thinking of a possibility.
Opening up a campaign.
It may come up.
Opening up a campaign will very well open that situation.
It's a political campaign.
Yeah, of course.
So, Faraz,
I say this because SLPP General Secretary, or one who really runs SLPP, is the task force chairman. So they can campaign. They can distribute food. They can, it's a wholly uneven campaign. This is going to be. It's not going to be a free and fair election.
I think food is being distributed without any political color.
No, well, but who
Accepting
controls?
that some of the Santos stuff has a flower bud stamped on some of the parcels.
But they stopped that, I think.
And
Yeah.
Paras,
No, all of
I
these
want
are
to
started and
say
stopped.
that if you say that 300, it is the whole position. But the people who have gone out of the hospitals, you never say it like that. So deduct that and say to us. Then
202 people are right now.
That's right. So
that's on the average of 8. Another 20 days, it will be it'll be 400.
No, don't worry about that.
Mr. Silva, so
nobody can say
I don't
that.
think for us. I don't think it's right
I don't
for us
think it's
to
going to be that
I don't
exponential.
think. I apologize on behalf of us. I don't think we should even pray for the fact that it has to go to 400. I think we are a nation and we have to stand with the people for us at the end of the day and not even pray for a situation of that sort to happen. So all
We're not praying for that, but those possibilities we must be aware.
in the event it happens. So anyway, we have a question for Mr. UR De Silva. So even before the nomination was closed, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, addressing SAARC leaders, said that he is going to hold elections in Sri Lanka whatsoever. So he was very steadfast about it. So even before we locked down the country, because he knew in his mind they have to go for an election in order to consolidate power, isn't it?
No, the problem would be that he was of the view that this won't happen. That is normal person will think that we can control this and then it won't go.
How can he not think? Because in his address to the nation, he brings in control prices for dal and canned fish. That's
correct. Yeah.
So he knew it's going to happen.
No,
I'm sure he did not have a crystal ball thinking that this is going to be worse. But they should have at least closed down doors. A lot of people that I have interviewed on my show during the course of this week had very clearly said that we were too late to close the doors in Sri Lanka.
Why you were saying that? Because now at the moment...
Again, not my opinion, expert opinion, saying that...
People can say like that. Yeah. We have to be positive and think loudly. Because you know why? Now we say that we took some time to close. Why? What happened? Thereafter, the people came, and the people who came earlier, and they have been...
Mr. De Silva, I'll give you the mechanics now, so because you're mentioning about this. The person who has spread the virus in Keselvatha came to Sri Lanka on the 12th of March 2020. As a result of this one individual, if we close shop, or if we close Sri Lanka on the 11th, this wouldn't have been so. We would have been in a much better position.
No, we can say that if he has...
I am not saying, these are the figures that are talking.
What I am saying is, if she or he has not gone to various places, then you can say it won't happen. No, that is not the way that we have to think. We can't say, because of that one person, you should have done this and that. They have done, up to now, the things that they have done is perfectly right. As Mr. Saruk stated, we have tried to do something and we were successful. And this is not our view.
No, anyway, Mr. De Silva, we have to have another show to talk about where the government went wrong as far as COVID-19 is concerned. I think it's too premature for us to come into a conclusion about COVID-19 at present, because right now, as Mr. Sumandiran, Mr. De Silva and also Mr. Zaruk, I think our fervent hope is that we have to come on top of this mess for us. So that's important. I think even Faraz and Shalan would agree with me when I say that we have to reduce the numbers. But the point is an election the need of the hour now?
No, not necessary. Because Election Commission has decided on that. Whether we have no option. It is up to the Election Commission. We can't say don't do that. After considering everything, arbitrarily or with his powers, he has decided to go to the 20th of June. So nobody can, even the president can't say anything with regard to that. People say that president wants the election. I don't think. Now, as we said, we don't want election, but election should be there. As a rule, we have to have the parliament. But at this stage, we should have the election or not. It is up to the election commission. The election commission is of the view that we can have the election on the 20th of June. We can't say anything. We have to wait and see. We have to pay. As he said quite correctly, we have to pay. The country will come to normal situation.
Gentlemen, I want to read out another question. Yes. It's a statement, actually, from one of our viewers. First 100 in 54 days. Second 100 in 19 days, and the third 100 in 8 days. And are we talking about having elections and putting all these people at risk? Really?
The commissioner should be.
Is that what we're talking about?
Faraz, that matter would have been discussed by the Elections Commission and the task force. And it is the Election Commissioner who decided on the date and has informed.
Where are the medical people?
Sorry?
Where's the medical people?
That's why they were
the GMOA wants us not to have it for at least 3 months.
They were there. They were there in today's discussion. They were all there.
They were clearly overruled.
Not overruled. Who? No,
you have no answer to this thing. The sad fact is that this virus isn't going away just yet. And to
pull the people out on the streets is to gamble with the safety.
For us, you have to expect an exponential growth in this particular infection. That's before the curve flattens, as they call it. But this happened because of one incident, which was not revealed, and that was discovered subsequently. Their own
Mrs. Zaruk, during the last 8 days, 100 patients have been infected with COVID-19.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Did you know?
That's right. But anyway, the point is, they expected this. They said it will come up because most of them were from the quarantine areas, or most of them were coming from the quarantine.
I don't think, Mrs. Zaruk, that you are privy to the latest reports on the media. The last 10 days alone, we have had approximately 100 cases infected with COVID-19.
That's correct.
That's a very big figure. Now, I have a question for you. So, one of my viewers have posed a question to Mrs. Zaruk saying, we are now talking about the worst case scenario, but remind yourself with the situation in Italy, remind yourself with the situation in Spain, remind yourself with the situation in China, where a second spate of a wave of COVID-19 individuals are now being detected from these countries, and Sri Lanka is not far away.
All these possibilities are taken into account. I have taken part in 2 discussions, nothing to do with connected with it, or some other matter, or some other aspect. I was part of a delegation to make certain representations. That's another issue. In that, I noticed that many factors have been taken into account. They have factored everything in. And I think experts are handling it. And I think the biomathematics are being done very, very in a scientific manner. Predictions are being done. The measures that we have adopted are very great, except, of course, I would personally prefer more tests being done. And we have certain limitations as far as...
Ms. Zaruk, let's keep this...
No, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So by and large, all these possibilities and fears are there, my dear. These possibilities and fears are there. I'm not ruling them out. But all these are factored in, and our experts have taken all these into account.
I want to go to
so far, they have managed well.
Mrs. Zaruk,
yeah.
Somebody's telling me that the message from COVID-19 to the world is, don't be cocky. I want to ask this from Mr. Sumanthan, please. What happens to the country between the 2nd of June and the 20th of June? Are we a rogue state?
Yeah, we are, because we don't have a parliament. You see, I wanted to come in earlier on. I agree with Mr. U.R.D. Silva when he says the people elected the president. Yes, they elected the president. They did not elect Gotabaya Rajapaksa to be the parliament also. Parliament is a separate institution.
No, that is agreed, yeah.
But Parliament is important. Merely because people elected the president doesn't mean that we can do away with the Parliament. No way. Parliament is a separate institution, totally independent. I'm sure he agrees with that.
And the sooner Parliament is...
Sooner Parliament, yes. That's correct. But here, I want to make a very clear statement. I want to place the blame on wanting to have the elections this early in this indecent hurry solely at the feet of the president. As I said earlier, the president was in a hurry, the first opportunity to dissolve parliament, with the knowledge that this was there. On the 24th of January, the leader of the opposition, Sajith Premadasa, raised this matter in parliament as early as 24th of January. And when he raised it, he said yesterday, that is 23rd of January, he said yesterday the WHO met for the whole day to contemplate declaring a pandemic. What is Sri Lanka doing about it? The Minister of Health's reply was just a bluff. Then he gave notice, 5 questions, and asked the question again on the 5th of February in Parliament. Now, for all of those people who think that Parliament is useless, this is what Parliament did. Raise this question. He even asked the question, why haven't we still closed the airports? He said 26th of January to 8th of February is the Chinese New Year holidays. That's when the Chinese travel around. There are bound to be Chinese tourists coming here.
On the 24th, he said, from tomorrow, why haven't you taken, what steps haven't you taken? These are the questions that people ask in Parliament. That was not responded to. Now I come to the President. You see, you asked a question about the SAARC Leaders Conference. He said that on the date specified, 25th of April, we will have the election.
We will have the election.
He said that a few days after WHO declared it a pandemic. How was he able to say that? Right? That is one. Secondly, I won't put any blame on the Election Commission, because the last letter that was written by the Secretary to the President to the Election Commission challenges them and says, who told you that an election can't be held before the 28th of May? It says that. Dr. P.B. Jayasundara has challenged the Election Commission in that last letter, saying, who told you that an election can't be held before 28th May? So what is he saying? Fix the date. You dare well fix the date before 28th of May. That is what he's saying.
Twisting the arm of the Elections Commission.
Commission. Yeah. That is what they said. So the President was somehow determined to hold these elections, even over dead bodies, literally. And I want to tell the country, the blame, first blame, lays at the feet of the President of this country.
Mr. Mandran, that's not a fair statement to make, because I think the security forces, as well as the head of state, must be having their intentions.
No, with regard to the election, I'm saying this.
And in fairness to the President also, he made those decisions based on the situation as on that date.
But
there were a few confirmed cases.
Yeah, there were a few confirmed cases. So at that time, that was the data available, and it based
that
on
is
that
why
only.
That is why I said I know
you
election will not be held.
All this, so it's not fair to say that.
Election not being held doesn't mean that we can't have no parliament.
But President's Council, M.S. Sumanthiran, it's pointless right now for us to cry over spilt milk. And from what I've gathered is from the course of this discussion is the fact that, well, you need three arms of the state for a state to function properly. And as you quite rightly pointed out, President's Council, M.S. Sumanthiran, we could end up being a rogue state if only one arm of the state is functioning. Now, directing my attention to President's Council, UR de Silva, you said that there is no necessity right now to hold the elections. You also said that there is no necessity to convene the form of parliament. And I believe we just got an alert from News1st saying that the President has stressed that there is no need to convene the old parliament. So the President concurs with you. And also you said that there is no need to seek for the opinion of the Supreme Court regarding how we should function in the future. So in your expert opinion, what should we do now?
No, do all these things, not that I say, according to the Constitution, if he is going beyond that or he is violating it, certainly anybody can go there and challenge it. Now, it is up to the people or to the authorities to go there and challenge it.
To the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court. Right. There is every opportunity to do so. But at the moment, what I say is, he is acting according to the frame of that Constitution. So he has all the powers to do that. So if he is not going to do that, how can we say he is not...
So you're saying that we can't compel him to do...
That's correct, yeah. And the other thing, what Mr. Sumanthiran, President Council stated, that if the Election Commission is an independent body, so they have every opportunity to say no or yes. So if the secretary says that you have to have 20th of, then if he is biased or if he is afraid, he should have that date. No, he has ignored that date.
No, but how independent are the commissions in Sri Lanka? That's another question.
That of course we have to decide later.
Yeah, that's another question.
On the face of it, what I am saying is that they have, after consulting everybody, they have come to this position that we have to have 20th of June.
Because the independence of the Elections Commission also is under contention, because
they have not consulted. They have not consulted the political parties.
They were supposed to meet them tomorrow at 10
so after making a decision.
Yeah, so not after
up until now, they have always consulted the parties before.
Yeah, I don't want to talk,
not after.
I don't want to talk about that, because that's up to lawyers like M.S. Sumanthiran, Mr. UR de Silva, and also Mr. Zaruk to go to courts one day and argue about, but I leave it for that. But Mr. de Silva, initially you were in agreement when Mr. Sumanthiran said that the President has to make an announcement with regard to a resolution that is being forced by him So he decided the 15th of May to be that date.
14th.
So 14th of May to be that date, and you were in agreement to that.
That's correct.
And
Yeah,
you said you nodded
That's a
your head.
mandatory requirement.
Yeah. So, but right now, what is the date given by the president? Because we all know that such a date has not been declared, and we have violated that the first principle.
So
That is,
then he has to go to the next step. That is the
so where did the president announce of a next
election
date?
commissioner.
So where did the president announce of a next date?
That is what I'm come to, because
No. So I'm completely basing my argument on the Constitution of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, where excerpts were read by Mr. Sumanthiran, and you agreed in agreement, saying that it is so. But where in the media or even a communique has the presidential media division or the president himself has issued to have or convene the parliament subsequent to the 20th of June?
Here.
When is that?
That's why I'm coming
Yeah.
to, because now
Not
already the election commission, they have decided the 20th of June. Why? They think that it is the possible date we can have free and fair election. That is what they meant. So not the president. So then thereafter, the first date he can achieve. So he can't achieve that date. So then the next date, after 20th of June, he has to inform from tomorrow onwards, he has to inform to the country that what is the date that he is supposed to call the parliament on after 20th of June. That is how it goes.
But that date cannot be a date later than 3 months from the date of dissolution.
2nd of June is
Yeah.
the furthest date that he can.
Yeah,
So, but then how is that compatible?
75C says he can change the date. It says,
Yeah.
75C says he can change the date, but
Has to be-
certainly not later than 3 months from the date of
I just want to place it on record for the three gentlemen, the three learned gentlemen, the President's Council, that the President's task at the moment is difficult. It's not an easy job to do. So at the end of the day, we have to agree that being on that position, being on that seat is not easy during a pandemic of this sort. So it's important to remember that pointing the finger at him is okay by the three gentlemen who are here. I think Mr. Sumanthiran in particular. I think Mr.
I did that. I must qualify that. I did that in relation to his anxiety to somehow have the election.
Yeah.
Not with regard to his handling of the
Absolutely. So
issue.
we have to separate those two. It's not an easy task. Even any political party is on that chair. Any politician in that chair, it's going to be a very difficult task to manage a global pandemic of this sort, where there are no boundaries whatsoever. So I want to give an opportunity for Faraz and Shalan to ask one question each, and then we close the round for the final round. So Faraz and Shalan, I'll give you 3 minutes each to pose a question to the three panelists before we close the second round.
Thank you, Shamir. I'd like to pose my question to President's Counsel M.A. Sumanthiran. Say, for example, I'm a concerned citizen. I'm concerned about the fact that it's only the executive arm of government, executive arm of the state that is functioning right now. I'm concerned that there is no parliament. But the president does not want to seek the opinion of the Supreme Court regarding how we should function in the future. Could I petition the Supreme Court? But I want to petition the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court is not sitting. What should I do right now?
You can file an e-petition in the Supreme Court. E-filing is possible. In fact, I drafted something and it was filed this morning on something else. And when the court is able to sit, court will sit or conduct a hearing by any other means, as Mrs. Aruk also said, and depending on the urgency of the matter, and court will make a decision. So, thankfully, we have the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which enables any citizen to challenge the decisions, actions or inactions of the President. So, action of the President or inaction in not revoking the Gazette of 2nd March also can be challenged by anybody. So, that's one course of action that is open. Nevertheless, I think the matter now having come to a point where there is a constitutional deadlock that has arisen. President has to give another date, but it cannot be a date after 3 months from the date of dissolution. But the date of election is after 3 months from the date of dissolution. Obviously, there's a huge issue. And he is only one who can consult the Supreme Court according to the Constitution. I'm not talking about what the 19th Amendment has permitted. 129 permits him to consult the Supreme Court in such an instance. That's what the Commission initially advised him to do. He has chosen not to do that. So I suppose other citizens will petition the Supreme Court.
And also, I need to wrap up, Sharan, with your permission and also for us. Thank you very much, gentlemen, Mr. Sumanthiran, Mr. De Silva, as well as Mr. Zaruk, for your thoughts in the first and second round. However, you have a final round as well to voice your opinion. So I leave it at that for the moment. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's Face the Nation. We're talking about what is the need of the hour. Is it an election? 20th of June 2020 has been earmarked as the parliamentary election of Sri Lanka. Where are we heading? All this and more in the final round. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Come on.
Look up! මයිමින් අපි ගැනත් පොඩ්ඩක් කියන්නකෝ. එතකොටනේ රටම අපි ගැන දැනගන්නේ.
මායිම හැමදාම හැමදේම දිනපතා රාත්‍රියටයි 30ට.
Brainbusters with Slit Season 2 Grand Finale. Royal College, Colombo, Jatha Vidyalaya, Matara, Ananda College, Colombo. Are you ready? George Keith,
Ray Vijayawardena, White Island, no Amar.
Is correct. Brainbusters with Slit Grand Finale, Saturday at 6:30 p.m.
This is Newsline Live. Watch us for all the action. We ask all the questions that you want answers to.
Welcome back. It's the final round right here on Face the Nation. We'll start off with President's Counsel, Mr. Raziq Zaruk. Just to keep the three of you informed, I know you're all President's Counsel. No new arguments can be brought forward in the final round. So we will only finish off with a rebuttal if you require. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a message to the government as well as authorities what to do as far as the future is concerned. Now, Mr. Zaruk, you come from a minority sect. You're a Muslim. In your opinion, right now, how do you think the minorities should act in a situation of this sort? Because at the end of the day, all of us are fighting for one cause, that is to make Sri Lanka supreme. Sri Lanka reigns supreme. We all have to unite to make sure that we come on top as far as COVID-19 is concerned. We have to rise as a nation. What is your message to all the communities in Sri Lanka?
I think you're quite right. I think we have to forget all our differences. We should think that we are Sri Lankans and then fight a common cause in a common manner. And we should all be united and focus ourselves and help the government and support the government in its effort to fight this, not only as minorities, even with different political hues, whatever may be our different political hues, We have to fight this common enemy, which is the coronavirus. So as far as that your question is concerned, that would be my answer. But do you want me to wind up the answer?
Yes, you can say in your closing remarks, you can probably rebut any of the points that were brought forward by the speakers.
May I come into my closing remarks?
Yes, of course. You have 2 minutes.
Yes. No, I would like to say this. I mean, having listened to Mr. Sumanthiran as well as my dear friend Mr. Silva, this is an extraordinary situation with extraordinary challenges. I believe the law has not provided for anything and everything. And in such circumstances, as Faraz pointed out, we have to go into the doctrine of necessity. I mean, the law never envisaged that the Election Commission would fix a date beyond the date on which Parliament was to be summoned. Now, that has happened now already. A date has been fixed. Now, under those circumstances, what has the President got to do? The Constitution is quite silent on that matter. So he has to summon Parliament on a date subsequent to the 20th of June. So that is not provided in the Constitution. So we have to resort to this doctrine of necessity. Necessity rather burdens us with solutions and with situations that has to be met. So I believe you cannot shut off government and say, look, you can't do those things. The Constitution doesn't permit it. The laws doesn't permit it. But we'll have to go in, look at it very, very seriously, that in these extraordinary situations, necessity has to be considered and the doctrines adopted accordingly, and flexibility has to be adopted. And this has been done in so many ways, in so many judgments. There are a series of judgments, I believe, both in the United States as well as in other countries, where even Justice Thurgood Marshall's judgments coming to my mind at the moment, where he had said, situations of this nature, you have to innovate, and then you cannot be doctrinal. Look at a point of view strictly by the Constitution or by the laws. In situations where it has not been provided, then you will have to use extraordinary decisions have to be made. So we are in that position now. So I won't blame the President if he has to make extraordinary decisions.
An exceptional answer, Mr. Zaruk. I now move my attention to Mr. De Silva, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. He's also a President's Counsel. Mr. De Silva, in your closing remarks, what is the message you have?
So what is your main topic? That is, what is the need of the hour? So I say the need of the hour is safety of people, safety of our country people. That is why we came here, and you have chosen 3 different people. That is what we want. We have expressed our views, all for the benefit of our people. So what we need is the safety of people. We will try to eradicate this situation, and thereafter, the next step is economic. The final is that we have to have the Parliament. So I am not in agreement to say that the priority should be given to the election. No, but Election Commission has the power, and within this scenario, and they have decided under election laws of this country, we are in a position to do so. Why they say it like that? So we can't ask them to change that. So if we can make representation later, if the total or the people who are suffering will go out, the figure is going up, then we can make representation to Election Commission. They have the opportunity to make representation to the Election Commission, and Election Commission is of the view that this 20th of June, we are not in a position to do so. We are in agreement to postpone it. So that is why we say we want our country to be safety, and then we will go united, and then we will do our best for the benefit of our country. We have learned lessons from this COVID-19, and we have learned a lot of lessons, and we have to think loud, and we have to be positive, and we should go together and do the...
Thank you very much, Mr. U.R. De Silva, the President's Counsel as well as former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Finally, we have Mr. M.A. Sumanthiran, also President's Counsel.
Excuse me, Shamir.
Yes.
The doctrine of necessity,
finds harmony with News1st representation of the people. I'm sure you'll permit me to just ask Mr. Sumanthiran this one thing.
Very quickly.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa complains that the opposition didn't, or the other side, didn't allow them to pass a vote on account. What do you have to say about that?
I was the chairman of Public Finance Committee, and the day before that was presented to Parliament, the Public Finance Committee had to pass it. And I examined it with a few members who were, most of them were from the opposition, and we passed it. And I gave the report to Parliament saying that this is this can be passed.
Right. So I was just about to say...
So not all opposition members blocked it.
So I was just about to say, Mr. Sumanthiran, that you don't have to even answer that question because it's a final round. So however you chose to answer. But in your final remarks, objectively, what is the message you have? Now, I know you're seated on the opposition. You've always been seated on the opposition benches of the parliament.
Always will be.
Always will be. Objectively, what is the message? Because we know that the security forces have done a good job. We know the president has given the leadership. We know that the health sector services have done a remarkable job. And we as journalists also have come to the forefront to keep our viewers abreast of all the developments that take place, putting our lives also at risk. So what is your message objectively to everyone?
The message, obviously, we'll have to start with thanking the medical professionals, health sector workers, security forces, various other people, including the president, in doing a very good job under the circumstances in addressing this situation. However, there is a thing that is necessitated, we want to use that word, and that is the proclamation dissolving parliament has to be necessarily set aside. If we are to have parliament but not have elections at least for a while. That's the only way I can see this election issue resolving. Right? I don't think it is responsible for anybody to rush into an election at this stage. But that does not mean that we can be without parliament for too long. So there is way out for that. Now, before I conclude, may I also take the opportunity to remind ourselves of what happened 1 year ago. We are nearing the 21st. On the 21st of April last year, we lost several hundred lives. And we are in a situation not even able to commemorate that and mourn when we mark the 1 year. And I would like us to perhaps think of that and perhaps tomorrow observe a period of silence in memoriam.
There's a period of
silence tomorrow. Because that was, one of the worst that the country faced. And now we are faced with this pandemic. And we all have to get together. And from the opposition ranks, I will even count in the support of the JVP, the SJB, and the UNP. I hope they don't dispute what I say, that we all will join our hands. That's how parliaments have always functioned. Join together and fight this. We should not fight this with the one-legged stool.
Thank you very much, President's Counsel M.A. Sumanthiran, former Member of Parliament, for joining us on the show tonight on Face the Nation. Thank you very much, President's Counsel Mr. U.R. De Silva, former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, President's Counsel Mr. Razik Zaruk, for joining us this evening on Face the Nation. And thank you very much, Faraz and Shalan, second-year law student, for joining us this evening on the show as well. It's important to understand that the President, the security forces, the armed forces personnel, alongside with the health sector service personnel in Sri Lanka, has done a remarkable job. No one is even thinking that this figure should go up. There has to be a flattening of this curve, and we as a nation have to rise up and stand tall. History will be the best judge as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And as journalists, we don't have a political side. We have only one side, and that is the side of the people. So we ask questions, tough questions sometimes, and guests sometimes do get angry with us, and we are sometimes attacked in social media as well. But that's okay, because we have a common cause at the moment. We aren't kids either. We have professionals working around the clock to bring you up-to-date stories, and our trust makes sure that we cannot be purchased either. We are a news network that stands with the people always. Now, this trust must be earned over the years. Though good times and bad, we are always with the people. We report for them and them alone. I leave you tonight with the quote, as I always do. The Constitution is there to protect the people from power, but unfortunately, it cannot protect us from ourselves. Take care and good night.